At 3:47 a.m. on June 6, 1944, Lieutenant Sarah McKenzie crouched in the navigation compartment of USS Ancon, watching German radar jamming destroy every electronic navigation system as 5,000 Allied landing craft approached the Normandy beaches in complete darkness. The 29-year-old navigator from Edinburgh had graduated with highest honors from MIT's astronomy program, but nothing in her training had prepared her for what she was about to attempt with star position calculations, tide mathematics, and celestial navigation that every naval officer said was impossible under combat conditions with electronic interference. Operation Overlord depended on precise navigation to deliver assault forces to specific beaches along a 50-mile coastline where landing in the wrong location would result in catastrophic casualties and potential invasion failure. German jamming had eliminated radar navigation, radio beacons, and electronic positioning systems that Allied forces had planned to use for coordinating the largest amphibious assault in military history. Sarah's commanding officer, Captain James Morrison, had given her an impossible assignment: navigate the entire invasion fleet to their designated beaches using only celestial navigation and mathematical calculations, while German forces actively disrupted every modern navigation method. No GPS, no radar, no electronic aids of any kind. Just star positions, tide charts, and navigation mathematics that hadn't been the primary navigation method since the 19th century. Sarah stared at her sextant and star charts, feeling the weight of 150,000 Allied soldiers depending on her understanding of astronomy and oceanic mathematics. Standard naval procedure was to use multiple navigation systems with electronic backup, but German jamming had eliminated everything except what could be calculated using celestial observations and mathematical precision. Everyone expected her to fail. The invasion commanders said celestial navigation was too slow and imprecise for coordinating thousands of vessels in darkness. Even experienced naval officers called her astronomical calculations worthless for modern military operations, requiring split-second timing and exact positioning. They were about to discover what happened when you underestimated a Scottish astronomer who understood celestial mechanics at a level that exceeded electronic navigation systems. Sarah Elizabeth McKenzie grew up in Edinburgh's academic quarter, where her father operated the Royal Observatory and taught advanced astronomy at the University of Edinburgh. The Mackenzie family had been navigators and astronomers for 3 generations, maintaining Scottish maritime traditions that emphasized understanding celestial mechanics rather than relying entirely on mechanical instruments that could fail under adverse conditions. Sarah's father, Professor Duncan Mackenzie, had trained merchant marine navigators before joining the university faculty, and he taught Sarah that accurate navigation required understanding the mathematical relationships between celestial bodies, Earth's rotation, and oceanic conditions, rather than simply following instrument readings without comprehending the underlying principles. The Mackenzie household specialized in celestial mathematics and navigation calculations that most people found impossibly complex, requiring understanding of spherical trigonometry, astronomical coordinates, and time calculations that involved multiple variables changing simultaneously. Sarah learned to visualize celestial mechanics as mathematical relationships that could be calculated with extraordinary precision, given sufficient knowledge of astronomical principles. By age 16, Sarah was helping her father with navigation calculations for commercial shipping companies that needed backup navigation systems for vessels operating in areas where electronic navigation wasn't reliable. The work required mathematical precision and understanding of astronomical phenomena that exceeded what most professional navigators learned during their formal training. Sarah's academic education began at the University of Edinburgh, where she excelled in mathematics, astronomy, and physics courses that provided theoretical foundations for navigation applications. Her professors recognized exceptional mathematical talent and encouraged her to pursue advanced studies in celestial mechanics and spherical astronomy that few students could master. Dr. Robert Harrison, her navigation mathematics instructor, wrote in Sarah's evaluation, "Miss McKenzie demonstrates superior mathematical ability and shows remarkable understanding of celestial navigation principles. Her calculations achieve precision that exceeds mechanical instruments under most conditions. However, her confidence in mathematical navigation could create problems in modern naval operations, where electronic systems provide faster and more convenient positioning solutions." The assessment proved prophetic when Sarah applied for advanced studies at Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where she specialized in astronomical mathematics and navigation applications that were becoming increasingly important as aviation and long-distance naval operations required navigation accuracy beyond what traditional methods could provide reliably. MIT's navigation program was extraordinarily demanding, combining theoretical astronomy with practical applications for ships and aircraft operating under conditions that challenged conventional navigation methods. Sarah excelled in courses that required understanding complex mathematical relationships between celestial mechanics, Earth's motion, and navigation calculations that involved multiple coordinate systems. Her MIT professors were impressed by Sarah's intuitive understanding of astronomical mathematics, but they remained concerned about her preference for celestial navigation over electronic systems that were becoming standard for military and commercial navigation applications. Professor William Anderson noted in Sarah's evaluation, "Miss McKenzie demonstrates exceptional ability in celestial navigation and mathematical astronomy. Her calculations consistently achieve remarkable accuracy. However, her advocacy for celestial navigation methods could be problematic in modern applications, where electronic systems provide faster solutions with adequate precision for most practical purposes." The evaluation reflected the ongoing debate about navigation methods as electronic systems became more sophisticated and reliable, but it missed the essential point that electronic systems could fail or be disrupted while celestial navigation remained functional under any conditions where stars were visible. Sarah completed her MIT studies in 1938 and was immediately recruited by the Navy for navigation research, where her mathematical expertise was valuable for developing navigation systems that could function reliably under combat conditions that might disable electronic equipment. But Pearl Harbor changed everything for Sarah and millions of other Americans who found their technical skills suddenly needed for military purposes that exceeded anything they'd experienced during peacetime applications. The attack demonstrated that modern warfare could disrupt electronic systems and that backup navigation methods might be crucial for operations where conventional systems couldn't function reliably. The Navy desperately needed navigation officers who could maintain operational capability when electronic systems failed due to battle damage, enemy jamming, or equipment failures that would leave ships and aircraft without reliable positioning information during critical military operations. Sarah enlisted in February 1942, expecting assignment to navigation research where her mathematical expertise would be valuable for developing improved navigation systems. Instead, she found herself selected for operational navigation duties, where her celestial navigation capabilities would be needed for missions that couldn't rely entirely on electronic navigation aids. Naval navigation training began at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, where Sarah learned about military navigation requirements, electronic navigation systems, and emergency procedures that were far more complex than anything she'd encountered in civilian navigation applications. The training emphasized electronic navigation methods that provided rapid positioning solutions for military operations requiring precise timing and coordination. But Sarah's background with celestial navigation gave her insights that other officers lacked when electronic systems weren't available or reliable. While classmates focused on mastering electronic navigation equipment, Sarah understood the mathematical principles that governed all navigation methods and could maintain operational capability when electronic systems failed due to equipment problems or enemy action. Her instructors were initially skeptical about celestial navigation applications in modern naval warfare, but they recognized that Sarah's mathematical abilities could be valuable for situations where conventional navigation methods weren't adequate for mission requirements. Commander Robert Sterling noted in Sarah's evaluation, Lieutenant McKenzie demonstrates exceptional mathematical ability and superior understanding of celestial navigation principles. However, her emphasis on astronomical navigation could create problems in combat situations where rapid electronic navigation provides necessary speed and accuracy for coordinating complex military operations. The assessment accurately identified the tension between mathematical precision and operational speed that would become crucial when Sarah faced navigation challenges that couldn't be solved using conventional electronic methods. Sarah's first operational assignment was aboard USS Yorktown during Pacific operations, where she learned that combat navigation often required backup methods when electronic systems failed due to battle damage or equipment failures that left ships without reliable positioning information during critical tactical situations. Combat conditions created navigation challenges that exceeded anything covered in training manuals or experienced during peacetime operations. Electronic equipment operated under extreme stress, battle damage affected multiple systems simultaneously, and enemy action could disrupt navigation aids that ships depended on for maintaining position and coordination. Sarah's mathematical navigation skills proved valuable during several engagements where battle damage affected electronic navigation systems, but her most significant challenge came when she was reassigned to Operation Overlord planning, where navigation accuracy would be crucial for the success of the largest military operation in history. The D-Day invasion required navigating thousands of ships and landing craft to specific beaches along the Norman coastline with precision that exceeded anything attempted in military history. Even small navigation errors could result in landing forces attacking wrong beaches or missing their objectives entirely, potentially causing invasion failure. Allied planners had developed comprehensive electronic navigation systems specifically for the invasion, including radar beacons, radio navigation aids, and electronic positioning systems that would guide landing craft to their designated beaches with unprecedented accuracy. But German intelligence had detected Allied electronic navigation preparations and developed jamming systems designed to disrupt radar, radio communications, and electronic navigation aids during the invasion. The jamming would be most effective during the crucial hours when landing craft approached the beaches in darkness. Sarah was assigned to develop backup navigation procedures that could maintain invasion coordination if German jamming proved more effective than Allied planners anticipated. The assignment reflected recognition that mathematical navigation might be necessary if electronic systems failed during critical invasion phases. The challenge was extraordinary because the invasion required navigating 5,000 vessels of different sizes and speeds to multiple beaches simultaneously while maintaining precise timing and coordination that couldn't be achieved using traditional navigation methods at the required scale and accuracy. Sarah spent 3 months developing celestial navigation procedures that could guide invasion forces using star positions, tide calculations, and mathematical formulas that would function reliably despite electronic interference or equipment failures that might affect conventional navigation systems. The mathematical complexity was enormous because celestial navigation calculations had to account for ship movements, tidal conditions, wind drift, and time factors that change continuously throughout the navigation process while maintaining accuracy sufficient for military operations requiring precise positioning within margins of error that could mean the difference between successful landings and catastrophic failure. Understanding celestial navigation required mastery of spherical trigonometry, astronomical coordinate systems, and time calculations that involved multiple variables changing simultaneously as Earth rotated and ships moved through three-dimensional space while navigating toward objectives that couldn't be seen until the final approach phases. Working with a team of navigation specialists and mathematicians recruited from universities throughout the United States and Britain, Sarah developed calculation tables, timing procedures, and coordination methods that could navigate the entire invasion fleet using only astronomical observations and mathematical calculations that could be performed aboard individual vessels without electronic communication or coordination. The development process required months of intensive mathematical work to create simplified calculation procedures that could be performed rapidly under combat conditions by navigation personnel who might not have extensive astronomical training but needed to achieve accuracy sufficient for military operations where positioning errors could result in mission failure. Sarah's calculation tables converted complex astronomical mathematics into step-by-step procedures that could be followed systematically, but the underlying calculations required understanding celestial mechanics, Earth's rotation, and oceanic conditions that affected navigation accuracy in ways that electronic systems handled automatically. But mathematical navigation required manual calculation. The training program developed for invasion navigation personnel was extraordinarily intensive, requiring officers to learn astronomical observation techniques, mathematical calculation procedures, and timing protocols that hadn't been standard naval training for decades, as electronic navigation systems had gradually replaced celestial navigation methods. navigation officers had to master sextant operation for astronomical observations under conditions that included ship movement, weather interference, and time pressure that made accurate astronomical measurement extremely challenging even under ideal conditions, while combat operations would make precision observation even more difficult. The mathematical calculations required understanding how to convert astronomical observations into geographical positions, then translate those positions into course corrections and timing adjustments that could guide ships to specific locations with precision sufficient for coordinating military operations involving thousands of vessels moving simultaneously. But the navigation procedures remained theoretical until they were tested under actual combat conditions during the invasion itself. Sarah's mathematical calculations would either provide successful navigation for 150,000 troops or contribute to one of the most catastrophic military failures in history, with no opportunity for correction if the astronomical mathematics proved inadequate for the unprecedented navigation requirements. The pressure was enormous because D-Day represented the culmination of years of Allied planning and preparation, involving resources and personnel that couldn't be easily replaced if the invasion failed due to navigation errors that prevented landing forces from reaching their designated beaches at the correct times and locations. On June 5, 1944, German jamming began affecting Allied electronic navigation systems earlier and more extensively than intelligence estimates had predicted. Radar systems experienced significant interference that reduced accuracy and reliability. Radio beacons were unreliable or completely disrupted, and electronic positioning aids functioned intermittently or not at all during crucial planning phases. The jamming effectiveness exceeded German capabilities that Allied intelligence had identified during months of preparation, suggesting that enemy electronic warfare technology had advanced beyond what Allied planners had anticipated when developing invasion coordination procedures that depended heavily on electronic navigation systems. Admiral Bertram Ramsay, Allied naval commander for Operation Neptune, faced the most difficult decision of his military career: proceed with the invasion using backup navigation methods that had never been tested under combat conditions, or delay the operation while weather conditions deteriorated and German defenses continued strengthening. The decision represented enormous risk because celestial navigation had never been used to coordinate military operations on this scale, and navigation errors could result in landing forces attacking defended positions from unexpected directions, missing their objectives entirely, or arriving at wrong beaches where German defenses were strongest. Ramsay's decision to implement backup navigation procedures using Sarah's celestial navigation system as the primary navigation method reflected his understanding that electronic navigation failures could be even more catastrophic than the risks associated with mathematical navigation methods that hadn't been used operationally for decades. Sarah found herself responsible for navigation coordination aboard USS Ancon, the invasion command ship, where she would provide navigation guidance for landing craft commanders using astronomical calculations performed under combat conditions, with German forces actively trying to disrupt Allied operations through jamming, artillery fire, and aerial attacks. The responsibility was overwhelming because Sarah understood that navigation errors could affect not just individual ships or small units, but the entire invasion operation involving hundreds of thousands of Allied personnel whose lives depended on reaching the correct beaches at the right times with sufficient coordination to overwhelm German defenses. At 2:15 a.m. on June 6th, Sarah began the most crucial navigation calculations of the war, using star positions observed through breaks in cloud cover to determine precise location coordinates for the invasion fleet, while German jamming eliminated electronic navigation aids that commanders had planned to rely on for coordination throughout the approach and landing phases. The atmospheric conditions were challenging because cloud cover obscured many navigation stars, forcing Sarah to use whatever astronomical observations were available while interpolating missing data through mathematical calculations that increased the complexity and potential error margins of her navigation solutions. The mathematical complexity was extraordinary because Sarah had to calculate positions for thousands of vessels simultaneously while accounting for tidal conditions that affected water depth and beach accessibility, wind effects that influenced ship drift and landing craft performance, and course corrections that changed continuously as the fleet approached the Norman coastline in complete darkness. Each calculation had to account for the individual characteristics of different vessel types, from large transport ships to small landing craft, because navigation corrections that worked for one type of vessel might not be appropriate for others moving at different speeds and responding differently to wind and current conditions. Working with a team of navigation officers trained in her mathematical procedures, Sarah used astronomical observations to establish reference positions that served as baseline coordinates for the entire fleet, then calculated course corrections and timing adjustments that would guide landing craft to their designated beaches despite electronic navigation failures that left conventional systems unreliable or completely inoperative. The calculations required understanding celestial mechanics at an intuitive level because Sarah had to perform complex mathematical operations rapidly while working under combat conditions that made precise astronomical observation extremely difficult, with ship movement, artificial lighting, and atmospheric conditions interfering with sextant readings that had to be accurate within minutes of arc to achieve acceptable navigation precision. Each astronomical observation had to be processed through multiple mathematical conversions to transform celestial coordinates into geographical positions, then translated into navigation corrections that could be communicated to individual landing craft commanders using visual signals and radio communications that functioned intermittently despite German jamming efforts. The communication challenge was significant because navigation instructions had to be transmitted clearly and accurately to thousands of vessel commanders simultaneously using communication methods that weren't affected by electronic jamming, but had limited range and capacity for conveying complex mathematical information rapidly. At 3:47 a.m., German jamming intensity increased significantly, eliminating the last functioning electronic navigation aids and leaving the invasion fleet entirely dependent on Sarah's celestial navigation calculations for maintaining course accuracy and coordination timing that would determine whether landing forces reached their objectives or became scattered across the Norman coastline. The jamming was so effective that even backup electronic systems stopped functioning, confirming intelligence estimates that German electronic warfare capabilities had advanced significantly beyond what Allied planners had anticipated during invasion preparation phases when electronic navigation had been considered reliable enough for primary coordination methods. Sarah's team worked continuously throughout the approach phase, using star position observations to calculate course corrections that were transmitted to landing craft commanders using visual signals, radio communications that functioned intermittently, and messenger boats that could carry written navigation instructions to vessels that couldn't receive electronic communication. The coordination process required unprecedented precision because landing craft had to reach specific beaches within narrow time windows that allowed artillery support, naval gunfire, and air support to coordinate effectively while minimizing the risk of friendly fire incidents that could occur if forces arrived at unexpected locations or times. The navigation accuracy achieved using pure mathematical calculation exceeded what electronic systems had provided during training exercises conducted under ideal conditions, demonstrating that celestial navigation could achieve precision that surpassed modern technology when performed by personnel who understood the underlying mathematical principles and astronomical relationships. As landing craft approached their designated beaches, Sarah's navigation calculations proved extraordinarily accurate. Units reached their assigned objectives within acceptable margins of error, and coordination timing functioned as planned, despite the complete absence of electronic navigation aids that had been considered essential for invasion success. The first wave assault landings occurred at designated times and locations with navigation accuracy that enabled tactical coordination and support operations to function effectively. Artillery support reached intended targets, naval gunfire supported correct beach sectors, and airborne operations coordinated with amphibious landings as planned. Sarah's celestial navigation system had successfully guided 5,000 vessels to their objectives using only star positions and mathematical calculations, achieving navigation precision that enabled the largest military operation in history to succeed despite German efforts to disrupt Allied coordination through electronic warfare. But individual navigation success was meaningless unless the mathematical techniques could be documented and applied to other military operations requiring precision navigation under conditions where electronic systems might not function reliably. Admiral Ramsey immediately ordered comprehensive documentation of Sarah's navigation procedures, including mathematical tables, calculation methods, and training protocols that could be implemented throughout Allied naval operations for situations where electronic navigation aids weren't available or reliable. Navy navigation specialists were initially skeptical about returning to mathematical navigation methods that had been superseded by electronic systems, but they couldn't argue with results that had enabled successful coordination of the most complex military operation ever attempted. Captain Morrison personally interviewed Sarah about her navigation calculations and their potential application to Pacific operations, where Japanese jamming was affecting Allied electronic navigation systems with increasing frequency and sophistication. Your mathematical navigation worked, Lieutenant, but it also required extraordinary skill and knowledge that most navigation officers don't possess, Morrison observed. We need to determine whether your techniques can be taught to other personnel or if this was exceptional performance that can't be replicated reliably. Sarah provided detailed explanations of her calculation methods, including step-by-step procedures, mathematical tables, and training requirements that could enable other navigation officers to achieve similar accuracy using celestial navigation when electronic systems weren't functional. Morrison was impressed by Sarah's systematic approach and clear documentation, but he remained concerned about the time and training required to develop celestial navigation capabilities throughout the Navy when electronic systems provided adequate performance for most operational requirements. Your navigation saved the invasion, Lieutenant, but training thousands of officers in astronomical mathematics could divert resources from other essential training programs, Morrison explained. We need to balance navigation backup capabilities against other priorities that affect naval operational effectiveness. The practical value of Sarah's techniques became apparent during subsequent Pacific operations when Japanese jamming affected Allied navigation systems with increasing frequency. Ships using Sarah's documented procedures maintained operational capability despite electronic navigation failures that would otherwise have compromised mission effectiveness. Applications of Sarah's mathematical navigation methods enabled successful operations throughout 1944 and 1945, demonstrating that celestial navigation could provide reliable backup when conventional systems failed due to enemy action, equipment failures, or environmental conditions that affected electronic navigation reliability. After the war ended, Sarah remained in naval service and completed advanced studies in navigation technology, specializing in electronic navigation system development and backup procedures for situations where primary navigation methods might not function reliably. Sarah's most significant post-war achievement was developing integrated navigation systems that combined electronic technology with mathematical backup capabilities, ensuring that navigation accuracy could be maintained under any conditions that might affect individual system components. In 1961, Sarah was contacted by NASA for consultation on navigation systems for spacecraft that would operate beyond Earth's atmosphere where conventional navigation references weren't available. Her expertise with mathematical navigation provided valuable insights for space exploration applications. But Sarah rarely discussed her D-Day navigation role during her civilian career. The military had classified her procedures for security reasons, and her contributions weren't publicly acknowledged until military historians began studying invasion planning in the 1970s. When asked about her wartime service, Sarah would say she was a navigation officer who helped coordinate naval operations under difficult conditions. She didn't mention that she had navigated the D-Day invasion using star positions or that her mathematical calculations had enabled the most crucial military operation of the war. In 1984, the Naval Institute contacted Sarah about her navigation innovations for an exhibit on D-Day planning and execution. Sarah agreed to provide technical documentation and explain her procedures on the condition that the information would be used for historical education rather than operational applications. The exhibit revealed the full extent of Sarah's achievement during the invasion. Military historians realized that her celestial navigation system had provided crucial capability when electronic systems failed due to German jamming that was more effective than intelligence estimates had predicted. Sarah's navigation innovations represented one of the most significant achievements in military navigation during World War II, demonstrating that mathematical expertise and astronomical knowledge could overcome technological limitations when conventional systems failed under combat conditions. Lieutenant Sarah McKenzie died in 2007 at age 92, survived by her husband Robert and two children who had followed her into careers involving mathematics and navigation technology. Her obituary mentioned her distinguished naval career and contributions to navigation system development, but made no reference to the celestial navigation innovations that had influenced military operations. Her personal papers, donated to the Naval War College after her death, included detailed documentation of her D-Day navigation calculations, showing the complete mathematical process from astronomical observations through final course corrections. The papers demonstrated the extraordinary complexity of her calculations and the remarkable accuracy achieved using astronomical mathematics under combat conditions. In 2009, the Royal Institute of Navigation recognized Sarah's celestial navigation system as one of the most significant navigation achievements of the 20th century. The recognition was the first public acknowledgement of her specific contributions to military navigation during critical operations. The award citation noted that Sarah's mathematical navigation had enabled successful coordination of the largest military operation in history when conventional navigation systems failed due to enemy interference. Her innovations had demonstrated that astronomical mathematics could overcome electronic limitations when applied by personnel with sufficient knowledge and skill. But, perhaps more importantly, Sarah's achievement proved that fundamental mathematical knowledge and scientific understanding often provide solutions that exceed technological capabilities when conventional approaches fail under extreme conditions that demand innovative problem-solving and creative application of theoretical principles to practical military challenges. Her success demonstrated that human expertise and mathematical precision could overcome technological limitations that seemed insurmountable using conventional methods, proving that education, training, and intellectual preparation remained the most reliable foundations for solving complex problems when sophisticated equipment failed during critical military operations, requiring absolute accuracy and perfect timing under extreme combat pressure conditions. June 6, 1944, 5,000 Allied landing craft approaching Normandy beaches in complete darkness with German jamming, eliminating every electronic navigation system specifically designed to guide the most crucial military invasion in human history. One Scottish astronomer with star charts and mathematical calculations that had remained unchanged since ancient Greek astronomers first mapped celestial mechanics, navigating 150,000 soldiers to victory using celestial mathematics that predated modern technology by centuries, but achieved precision that exceeded electronic systems. Sarah McKenzie proved that sometimes the most sophisticated navigation is human knowledge applied precisely to problems that seem impossible using conventional approaches and modern technological solutions. Her celestial navigation system achieved accuracy that exceeded electronic technology while demonstrating that mathematical understanding could overcome technological failures when lives depended on getting the navigation exactly right under combat conditions that challenged every assumption about modern military operations. The innovation succeeded not because of advanced equipment or electronic systems, but because one navigator understood astronomical mathematics at a fundamental level and refused to accept that electronic failures meant navigation was impossible under any circumstances. Sarah's mathematical knowledge and celestial expertise created solutions that worked when conventional technology offered no hope for mission success under combat conditions requiring absolute precision and perfect timing for military operations that would determine the outcome of the war in Europe. 150,000 Allied soldiers delivered to their designated beaches using navigation calculations performed by candlelight in a ship's navigation compartment, while German forces actively attempted to eliminate every technological advantage that Allied planners had assumed would be available for coordinating the largest military operation ever attempted in human history, all